the best way to get out of a rut with content creation is to literally just create again. Literally just put out that first piece of content, that first podcast, that first video, or that first graphic, and just get right back into it. And people have said that over the years, and I've watched motivational videos about it, but it's always so hard to like actually do it. It's really hard to like get yourself to do it. You can watch all the motivational videos that you want, but it just gets to a point where you just gotta act on it at some point. But that's pretty much how I'm treating this podcast. Making that comeback episode was really, really hard, and just because I didn't really do any throughout the regular season, and making that first episode again, I went through the motions of wanting it to be perfect and wanting it to be as good as it could possibly be. But, it just gets to a point where you literally just have to hit record and sort of think out loud. And that's how I'm starting off this podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 16 of Hold the Lane. I'm your host, Dalton Floyd. And today we don't necessarily... Actually, scratch that. I wrote these notes like a couple weeks ago when I first recorded the last podcast, the comeback episode. And back then, I said that we don't necessarily have a ton of things on the agenda, but honestly, we kind of do. We have a good amount of things on the agenda today for the podcast. We have Vanguard news. The Vanguard beta ended. It feels like probably 2 weeks ago at this point, but I could be wrong. And I have like mixed feelings about that game right now, but I am going to be playing it for the entirety of its life cycle, and I'll give my reasons here in this podcast, what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, what I wish they would change, but I know that they're not going to change, and things like that. Vanguard has a lot of potential, especially for the competitive season for the Call of Duty League. So gonna have a lot to talk about there. We're gonna talk about that first. We're gonna talk about the reasons that I pre-ordered it. We're gonna talk about the weekend 2 of the beta, because since I'm on PC, that's pretty much the only weekend that I was able to play. I wasn't gonna go through the motions or go through the trouble of hooking up the PS5 and participating in the PlayStation Open beta. I sort of just like watched gameplays and streams when it comes to that. We're gonna talk about the potential competitive game modes for Vanguard, and talk about what the pros have been discussing and what's rumored, things like that, what I would like to see in the game. Really, it just comes down to consistency when it comes to that third game mode. So if you've watched the recent CDL, you're pretty much going to get where I'm coming from there. And then we're going to end it, as we will with most off-season podcasts. We're going to end it with Mania news. We're going to be talking about the 6 teams that are currently confirmed. And then we're going to talk about the other teams, just the few teams that are pretty much set in stone, even though we spent most of the podcast last time talking about the confirmed teams. So we're not gonna hit too long on the last like 2 rumored teams, but we will hit a lot on the confirmed teams, one of which actually happened while we were recording the last podcast. So I kind of hated to miss out on that one, but we'll talk a little bit about it in this podcast at the very end. So let's get into Vanguard. Vanguard is the newest Call of Duty coming out, made by Sledgehammer Games with a lot of help from other studios, including Treyarch when it comes to the Zombies game mode. But as most competitive fans, or competitive players and fans, we're pretty much just, or at least mainly, interested in the multiplayer. And the Vanguard beta happened. There were 2 weeks of the Vanguard beta, or 2 weekends, I should say. And they actually extended that second weekend all the way until Wednesday. So it was actually pretty fun. I got some extra hours in, things like that. And the Vanguard beta was a little iffy for me. It was very hit or miss. So I'm gonna go into like what exactly drove me to buy the game and pre-order it. And then I'll talk about the gameplay and what I think they should change, and what I think really won't change, just because it's pretty set in stone already. So personally, right off the rip, I didn't really want to play Cold War for basically 3 years at this point. And I say 3 years because we know that Modern Warfare is going to be getting a sequel after Vanguard's year is over with. And I didn't play really any Modern Warfare multiplayer. So I pretty much only played Gunfight. And yeah, Gunfight was fun, don't get me wrong, but I just wasn't a huge fan. They also didn't have a ranked play. They didn't have any sort of league play, any sort of ranked play. They just had the competitive playlist, which I guess is fun to a degree. I didn't play it at all. Honestly, I didn't even really watch that many people play it on stream or anything like that, so I never really got a feel for it. It just seemed like a regular pub playlist with some competitive rules. I think things were banned in it, but I'm not 100%. And then, yeah, so basically, since Modern Warfare is getting a sequel, I'm going ahead and assuming right now that I'm probably not going to enjoy it, just because I'm assuming the gameplay is going to be pretty similar to Modern Warfare. Using the same engine is not necessarily a bad thing, but just the gameplay in general, I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. But we'll see how it goes. We have the entire Vanguard year to go through, and the Cold War year feels like it kind of flew by at this point. But I really did enjoy the Cold War year as far as the gameplay went, as far as the storylines and matches with the competitive players went. It was really, really fun. It was really underrated. The throwback maps did save the map pool a lot, but it was for the better. So, yeah, I had another point here that being that Sledgehammer's last title, World War II, wasn't that bad for competitive, and they actually had a good ranked play system, I have high hopes for this year. If they can come back and pretty much do the same ranked play that World War II had, then people are going to be losing their minds. So I think I played a good amount of the World War II ranked play, but there were times where it was kind of a struggle in the beginning because I'm not necessarily sure if it's like this for other games that have really good ranked play systems like Valorant and things like that, but if you're like ranked a little bit higher than your teammate, then you can't play with them because they're like just a couple of 100 points below you or something like that. So that was kind of hard to get into at the beginning because you want to squad up and you want to play with the same squad all the time, but sometimes it's just difficult. Not necessarily a bad thing for the ranked play. It was just kind of weird to get used to at first back in like 2017 when World War II first came out. I think World War II was a really underrated COD. I didn't necessarily enjoy it in the moment, especially S&D. S&D was really weird at times, but watching the pros play it, it was really, really fun. I went to my first LAN event in that World War II year. It was CWL Anaheim. I've only been to 2 events and they were both Anaheim. So in that event, I think it was winners finals, Rise versus Red Reserve. There was the second ever hardpoint tie, and they had to replay the map. So that was really, really crazy. That was the first time that I had ever like actually jumped out of my chair and like lost my mind with the people next to me because it was my first event. So like I'm naturally a shy guy to begin with. So I didn't really like lose my mind for any of the other matches. I just sort of like chilled and like clapped at certain times when crazy things would happen, but like I didn't necessarily lose my mind like you would any other time. So like for any LAN event I went to after that, which was only one, I pretty much treated it like I paid money to be here and like I'm watching some insane matches. So you might as well get your money's worth and like cheer for your favorite team, lose your mind when crazy things are happening and things like that. So yeah, just a little bit of a deep dive into my LAN event experience. Have never played at a LAN, don't plan on doing that, so gonna go ahead and put that out there. I feel like I've wanted to at some point back in the day, back in like 2016, 2017, just to like do it, just to show up and do it and get knocked out first round for the fun of it, just to really experience it. But at this point, I'm good. But yeah, so going into Vanguard, we're going to go into the weekend 2 of the beta and talk about some of the things that I liked and things that I didn't like. I was doing the pros and cons list right here, and it was way easier for me to talk about the cons than it was the pros. But basically how my experience went was the first day of the beta, the first day that I got to play it, the movement was really, really tough to get used to at first, even with automatic tac sprint, which, to go ahead and put it out there right now, I'm 1000% using automatic tac sprint for the entire year. I feel like any pub player or any league play player shouldn't really be worrying about any sort of GAs that the pros have or anything like that, because it's literally just I don't want to ruin my controller, because I'm pretty sure the jump button on my Battle Beaver is already going out, so I don't want to ruin the sprint button. This Battle Beaver is way more durable than the scuffs that I've used in the past, so I'm thankful for that at least. But it was really fun in the Vanguard beta to not have to worry about clicking the left stick and the sprint button constantly to activate that tack sprint. So automatic tack sprint was a dub for me. Let's go ahead and talk about the cons first, just because I have more of those than I do have the pros. It's not a bad game. It's just that there are so many things that I wish were changed about it, because even World War II had some of the things that this game doesn't have, and I miss them. So first things first, when it comes to the cons, let's talk about the suppression. And for those of you who don't know what the suppression is in Vanguard, it's basically a gun perk, I'm pretty sure. And if you shoot like really, really close to, or like actually on an enemy, if you shoot their legs or you shoot like next to their legs, it pretty much distorts their vision a little bit and it slows them down. So I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure that other esports do have some sort of suppression effect where you slow down a bit. I think Apex may have it, but I'm not 100%. I have never really like heard about it. I've never heard it really talked about a lot until this year with Vanguard, because I just didn't really know about it that much. And I just don't really understand the meaning, or not really the meaning, but like I don't understand the reasoning behind having this, especially in a game like Call of Duty where movement is so vital to a gunfight. It's much less vital in a boots on the ground game, but it's still vital. I will say about the movement that you don't really use it in gunfights as you would in like Cold War or Modern Warfare with the slide canceling, or any jetpack COD. You're mainly using the movement in Vanguard to pretty much like get a jump on the enemy at the beginning of the game, or like jump around a corner, or just slide cancel and be ready for the gunfight. But you're not necessarily like sliding into a gunfight a lot. You're not doing it as like your main tactic of winning gunfights. So I do enjoy that. I do enjoy that you're not necessarily like abusing the movement that much to where you're constantly using it to win gunfights. So it doesn't have that big of an effect on every single gunfight that you have. The second point that I have is that there are no score streaks. There's kill streaks in the game, but there's no score streaks. I absolutely hate that, because it feels like for the past 3 years or something like that at this point, we've had some sort of weird streak system, whether it be Cold War's weird pub system where it's like you always have your streak, you're always getting points. Yeah, you get multipliers like by going on a streak, but you still like you don't lose the streak if you die when you have like 5 kills or something like that. And I just don't understand, like yeah, you're catering to casuals, but like it's just way more rewarding, and it helps the balance and the flow of the game if there's just true score streaks, because when you have kill streaks, it just promotes camping, and it just promotes a slower play style. Sure, the kill streaks in Vanguard are really, really fun, I'll give it that, but since Black Ops 2, I've been a big advocate for score streaks, and I feel like even when I started playing COD back in like Black Ops 1, I was a big advocate for like people and Call of Duty commentators that would say, we need kill streaks to sort of influence us to play the objective. Not enough people play the objective in COD. They really don't. Like especially in games like Modern Warfare and Vanguard, where there's no real incentive, or there's no benefit to playing the objective besides just a little bit more score. So score streaks are just better overall, because you get more score by playing the objective, and as a result, if you stay alive, you get your streaks, you get your spy planes, you get your dogs, you get your lightning strikes and stuff like that. So it's just weird to me when people sort of go back on this, and I'm sure it's an Activision call, so I can't really fault Sledgehammer that much, but it just sucks to see. Moving on, we have Dead Silence as a field upgrade yet again, coming back from Modern Warfare. But I will say, however, the footsteps are very, very quiet to begin with, and I love that. There's a lot of casual Call of Duty content creators that hate that footsteps are very quiet, as like a default thing. But I mean, I love it. Like, if we don't necessarily like need Dead Silence as a feature at all, just because the footsteps are that quiet to begin with, that's great. Like, I think that sort of taking a mixture of opinions from across the scene, I think that you should only be making sound in COD when you mantle, when you like jump from a high surface, when you slide, and I think that's about it. Like tack sprint, maybe, and like honestly, not even that. Uh, I don't know. I guess maybe tack sprint should make a little bit of noise, and then when you upgrade dead silence or when you like activate dead silence, you're completely silent. But like it's just weird. It's weird having these conversations because dead silence should always be a perk, and it shouldn't be something that we're worrying about that much. I wrote here for the last point, and I guess now the second to last point, that the streaks are interesting. We have pretty much a basic loadout of like spy planes, counter spy planes, glide bomb returning from World War II. I love that dogs are back, and it's really, really fun to get dogs. So it's always fun. I got them a couple of times in the beta, and it's so rewarding. Even when they don't get a ton of kills, and even when like the majority of them get killed, it's still really, 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 really rewarding to get those dogs. But I did want to say one thing, that I think that we've sort of set a standard at this point that every single Call of Duty should have some sort of equivalent to the Lightning Strike and Hellstorm from Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, Black Ops 4, and I just think it should stay the same and just sort of have it be that time period's equivalent. So for this World War II game, we have the glide bomb, and then we also have a mortar barrage, which, in my opinion, I didn't see a lot of gameplay of it, but it seems like it acts like the artillery barrage from World War II back in 2017. But the only thing I hate about it is you have to throw it like a trophy system in Cold War, or you have to throw it like really any field upgrade that you throw. And I wish that the mortar barrage was more like a, for lack of a better term, like an iPad thing that you activate on your own, and you don't necessarily have to be right next to where you want to throw it to get it to go. I just think that streak wise, it would be way more beneficial, and more people would run it if it acted like a lightning strike, and you don't necessarily have to like walk up like 10 feet away from where you're actually wanting to drop it, throw the thing down, and then run away, because more than likely you're either going to die, or they're just going to be, the enemies just aren't going to be there after that. So I don't know how successful it was in the beta because I didn't use it, but I did see a little bit of gameplay from it, and just the fact that there's that animation and not necessarily like a lightning strike animation, that part kind of sucked. And then the last con that we'll talk about here is the radar perk, and it's it sucks that we're talking about this as well, but the minimap is not the same this year. Very similar to Modern Warfare in the fact that you can't see red dots on the minimap unless you have a spy plane up, and even then, so many people run Ghost to begin with. For those that don't know, the perk that pretty much hides you from any sort of aircraft that gives away position if you are moving. So the good part is that the Ghost perk works only if you're moving. That's the only good thing. And then it doesn't, the minimap doesn't work normally. If you don't run the radar perk and you're not running a spy plane, you'll see absolutely no red dots on the minimap. I think that's right. You'll see no red dots at all. So you have to be running the radar perk to get like your normal Call of Duty experience. And the reason that I hate that so much is not necessarily because, the minimap should always be like that, because it should, but also because ever since Black Ops 2, it seems like the developers have always hated to have crutch perks. And crutch perks meaning that you feel like you can't make a class without having that perk on your class. Back in Black Ops 2, it was toughness, and toughness was the perk that reduced your flinch on every single gun, every single situation. And fast forward to 2021, and we have gun perks that like increase the enemy's flinch for no reason. And I think it was Prestigious Key or something like that that mentioned that I don't ever want a perk or a gun perk that influences the enemies like in a negative way. I just don't think that's balanced. Thankfully, it won't be in competitive, so the GAs are going to be through the roof this year, and it's going to be really interesting. So we spent a lot of time on the cons. Let's get into some of the pros that I had from the Vanguard beta, and we'll see what we think about it. So there's a bit of a divide. if you want to rank the last 3 Call of Duties for me, I think that just based on this weekend too, although I think that we're going to have a really fun Vanguard year, just from what I've seen, it's worse than Cold War for me personally, but better than Modern Warfare. I wrote here for the very first note that it's faster and has more fluid gameplay than Modern Warfare. I think that's partially due to the maps and just the way those flow. We're not going to talk about Red Star. We can talk about Gavutu, but we're not going to talk about Red Star because respectfully, I skipped Red Star every chance that I got. I played it a couple of times, but was not a fan of playing Red Star. For those that don't know, it was like a really, really big snowy map. Sort of looked like Block from COD 4, but a little bit more open. And the visual effects on that map were kind of crazy at times too. That's another thing that they got to work on is the visual distortion. And they did fix that a little bit going into weekend 2, but I think that they'll fix it a little bit more for launch. And so there were 4 maps for the entire beta. We had Hotel Royal, Eagle's Nest, Gavutu, and Red Star. And my top 2 favorite, the ones that I immediately pretty much said that I don't want to play anything else besides these 2, were Eagle's Nest and Hotel Royal. Eagle's Nest was by far my favorite map, so I don't know how it's going to work, but I feel like that'll get into the CDL rotation at some point. I think that it could be maybe a good search map or possibly hardpoint, but it seems kind of small to be a hardpoint map, or the layout seems kind of weird to be a hardpoint map. It's definitely possible though. But it's weird. So I want to talk about the destructible environments a little bit now that I've gotten my hands-on experience with them. So when I actually played the beta, it wasn't that big of an effect as I thought it was going to be. Basically, you had the walls that were very distinguished from other walls to pretty much indicate that you could smash through them, and you could run right through them, or you could melee it or shoot through it and get a little hole so you can get a different line of sight. The good part about it is that besides the doors, and you could destroy the doors too completely, but besides the doors, most of the walls or the windows that you could knock out, they were knocked out within the first minute of the game, really, if we're being honest. So the destructible environments didn't have that much of an effect on the gameplay, but in the custom games there is a setting to automatically have those turned off at the start of the game. So I think that the CDL and competitive players may do that, but I'm not holding my breath on it because they always want to say that they want it to be as close to the pub experience as possible, but there's going to be so many things in this game that they GA and try to turn off, so it's going to be really interesting. As far as more pros go, the guns were really fun to use. The gunplay was really fun. I wish that the time to kill was a bullet or 2 more, a little bit slower, so that we could have longer gunfights. I feel like there were a lot of instances where if I was having a bad couple of games, it just felt like I was getting melted and dying before I could even get a chance in the gunfight. I would either not see the guy or just get melted before I could even get a shot off or stuff like that. And yeah, that happens in other CODs, but in other CODs you also have a chance to turn on the guy because it takes more shots in that game, and you just have enough time if he misses a shot or 2. I wish that it took one more bullet with the MP40, or 1 or 2 more shots with the MP40 and the STG, all the main guns that you saw. Really universally, I wish that it just took a bullet or 2 more to kill someone in that game, and then we would be in a really good spot. But realistically, it's got a higher time to kill than Modern Warfare, so I'm not complaining too much, and that's why I'm kind of optimistic about this game. So the good thing, another big pro, is that I'm pretty sure I talked about it last week, or last episode, but I'm not 100% sure, is that we're getting 16. That's right, 16 record-breaking for Call of Duty 6v6 maps at launch. So for competitive players to only pick out 5 or 6, then that's really, really good for them to have that big of a pub pool to begin with. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I've always said that maps make or break a Call of Duty game, and that's pretty much true by any regard. So any Call of Duty that you can think of, like it lives and dies by its maps, and that's just the fact at this point. If the gunplay is great, the score streaks are there, there's like a ranked playlist and everything, but the maps are horrible, then it's tough. It's just a tough situation. So moving on from the weekend 2, I want to talk very briefly about Vanguard's potential competitive game modes and just hit on those really quick, because I know that a lot of pros have been saying like, oh, Patrol may come to the conversation, or like, what's the Control versus CTF debate, stuff like that. So right off the bat, I just want to say that Hardpoint and S&D has to be a lock. Hardpoint's been confirmed for the game. We're not going to have a situation like Modern Warfare where like we're not really sure if Hardpoint's even going to be in the game. We don't know if it's going to get replaced with Headquarters. There may be 25 Hardpoints on the map. Hardpoint has been confirmed. Hopefully the pros have talked to Sledgehammer, or Sledgehammer's just smart enough to begin with to not have 20 Hardpoints on the map, and we can just have 5 at the most and have maps that actually flow for Hardpoint pretty well. There was a bug actually in the weekend 2 of the beta where you could access custom games, and there were plenty of people playing S&D tournaments, chows and stuff like that, and not gonna lie, it was really, really like interesting and fun to see people like learn this game that early, because we haven't even gotten the launch of the game yet, but there's people learning nade spots, they're learning stun spots, and I guess I'll give that another pro. Another pro for the game is that Flak and Tac, although I'm pretty sure they're in the same category for Cold War, it's much more impactful in this game because the nades are a little more powerful, and having that balance between your perks and like what you run at a certain time, learning a team and what exactly they do, it's more important in Vanguard in my opinion compared to Cold War because of the wild cards. You can with the wild cards in Cold War you could run Tac and Flak at the same time, but to my knowledge you cannot. There's no possibility for that right now. You can only do the 3 perks, and then your 10 attachments, your 10 whole attachments on your gun in Vanguard. But the whole point I was trying to make there is that it's really important to have those 2 perks in the same slot, because you had people like Parasite saying that it was just important not to like weirdly mention him, but I watched a lot of his chows, and it's just like that's the big takeaway that I had, is that you're gonna have to really structure your classes around like, oh, you're gonna pick this one this round because they've been throwing a lot of nades on offense or stuff like that. So it brings a little more strategy into the game. Although the time to kill is quick, and it's gonna be a really quick and fast-paced S&D game in my opinion. The class balances and like what exactly people pick are gonna be really important. So I just wanted to hit on that. Okay, so back to the game modes. We have Hardpoint and S&D, and the big topic here is what the third game mode is going to be. And I feel like we talk about it each and every year. So we have Control, we don't know about CTF yet, and then we have Patrol, Patrol. Patrol is basically like a moving hardpoint in the game where it starts on a central location and then it moves throughout the map on a set and fixed path. And whenever someone talked about like the wacky spawns in Vanguard and stuff like that, I completely dismissed any tweets talking about spawns if they were looking at a Patrol clip. If someone was playing Control or Patrol and saw these crazy spawns, then I mean you can't really do a lot about it because it's a moving hardpoint. So I just feel like the spawns are bound to be kind of up in the air, and you can't really do much about it. I don't think that it's a good third game mode, even if the spawns do get worked on and like fixed. I don't really like it as a third game mode. Like, sure, I respect the idea, I respect like innovation, but I'm just personally not a fan of that Patrol game mode. So next up we have Control versus CTF, and pretty much my only argument here is that I have 2 points. One of them being momentum is a big factor in Call of Duty, and you can gain a lot more momentum in Control versus CTF if you're down. So imagine that you're down 0-2 or 0-3 in CTF versus if you're down 0-2 in Control, in Control. And just think about how difficult it is to fight back from that. So basically in CTF, if you're down 0-2 or 0-3, you have to cap 3 maybe 4 flags to get back into that game, or 3 to tie it up if that person has 3 flags. And there's so many stalemates in CTF, and you only have a limited number of time to work with. But with Control, if you're down to 0-2 in Control, you're pretty much starting with a clean slate each and every round, unless one of you has streaks, unless like someone on the other team has streaks. So like that reset with Control is really, really important. And I just think that that's why when you see teams go down 0-2, it's so much easier for them to bounce back and do a reverse sweep in Control, because it's just Call of Duty is a very momentum-based game, and if someone heats up in that last round, they know that they're about to get kicked out of a tournament or they're about to lose a league play game. They really turn up and just like sort of go balls to the wall and sort of don't really care anymore. Not necessarily not wanting to win, but pretty much not playing how they were before. So I just think that it's way more easier to come back from a deficit in Control versus CTF, and that's what makes that game mode so interesting. It makes it way more entertaining, not only for the CDL, but also for league play matches, because I've had plenty of those in league play, and it's so much fun and so much more rewarding. CTF's more of a slower game mode, and I don't really... Although it's a classic game mode, and there's been plenty of CTF plays in the past, my favorite CTF play of all time is Nifty back in the day. The team that he was on was called Icons Conquer, but nowadays he's a CSGO pro, and I'm not exactly sure what he's doing nowadays. I don't know what exactly he's doing. He was a CSGO pro for a little bit, but I'm not really sure. If someone's listening and they know about him a little bit more than I do, fill me in if you don't mind, and let me know. And then also my second point is that for the sake of consistency, it would be nice if Control remained the third game mode for the CDL. Like, it would be really, really nice if no matter what game we're talking about, whether it be another Treyarch title, the next Modern Warfare game, Vanguard, literally any Call of Duty title, it'd be nice if Control remained the third game mode, just because, it would get new fans sort of accustomed to how this goes. If we're switching game modes and we're switching everything each year, like at the very base, if we're switching a Call of Duty and switching the guns, switching the maps each and every year, it'd be nice if the game modes sort of stayed the same and we had some sort of consistency, because there's just a lot of instances where we're not really that consistent when it comes to the rules and when it comes to the GAs and stuff like that, because the meta in every COD is so different for the majority of the time. So I would like Control to be the third game mode and just leave it like that. I know that the movement may not be as crazy in this game, but attack sprint makes your sprint a little bit better, and the majority of the pros that were playing those chows and tourneys in Vanguard were running knives as the secondaries, so you can boost your momentum and your speed that way. So I think that Control would work pretty well in this game. You just have to be smart about where you put the points. So before we get into roster mania, I want to talk about one thing that was mentioned on the LA Thieves announcement when they did their little podcast with Enable when they announced their full team. Basically, I think it was Enable asked about the format, and that's been a big topic for the past couple of years because it felt really, really good with the CWL when we had 32 teams or whatever it was at Champs, and it was like a 16-team, I think it was a 16-team Pro League. And a lot of people love the CWL format. Obviously, with a franchise league, it's something that you can't really be realistic about when you're talking about that nostalgic format back in the day. But there are some things that you can steal from that format to make the CDL better. And Octane was asked what the format's going to be like, and the only thing that we know about the format so far, which I think it'll get announced in October. Shortly before the game drops, and I guess I'll hit on one more thing before roster mania regarding that. But Octane says that he's heard rumors that it will be similar to the Black Ops 4 CWL season with 2 separate divisions and cross-division play. Don't quote him on it, because even though I just did, but don't take that as fact, basically, is the better way of saying that, because they're literally just rumors at this point. But the pattern that we can see with Call of Duty pros and Call of Duty owners is that if we're talking about it, if it's in the conversation, then it's got a very high chance of happening. So I think that the format's only going to get better with each year in the CDL. You pretty much have to take that Modern Warfare year of the CDL and look at it like we started with a clean slate and everyone else is just sort of learning again, because it really did feel like that. As far as the spectating went, as far as the format went, it just felt really, really different. And then one last thing I wanted to tease before Roster Mania talk was I've heard from sources on Twitter and people that are tweeting out about it that there may be some sort of ranked play or competitive or esports reveal for Vanguard in October. Now, I haven't heard a lot about it in a long time. It's been a couple of weeks, so I don't know how truthful it is or how much credibility there is behind it, but it would be really, really nice. I feel like we've done it. It feels like we've done it for every year, but I'm not 100%. There's always been some sort of sit down with Maven and someone else talking about the esports scene and what they really have planned for it. So I hope that by like the middle of August, or not August, by the middle of October, we have some sort of feel for not only the format, but also what the game's going to be like when it comes to competitive. You know, maybe the format and like, I don't know, maybe the third game mode or something like that. I know there's a lot of testing that has to go into it, but like Sledgehammer has to throw us a bone with something, right? So finally, for the last segment, let's talk about Roster Mania. Basically, we have 6 confirmed teams for the CDL now for the 2022 season. We have 2 that are basically like right there, like we know it's happening. And then we have 4 that are either not confirmed, not announced, or we haven't really heard a lot about. So we're going to start off here with some of the easier ones, and we're going to speak on the ones where Toronto announces that they are sticking together with their roster consisting of Bance, Cammy, Kleenex, and Insight. And my thoughts on this, right after pretty much the day of Champs, I didn't see a reason that these guys shouldn't stick together, because they were literally in the grand finals of Champs. They had such a good year. Bance had a really like slow start to the year, but he really picked it up and had some amazing plays at the middle to later parts of the year. Even in the Champs Grand Finals, Bance was going off at so many different points that it was really, really fun to watch. So I think that these guys are really going to have a good time running it back, especially in a game with the movement like Vanguard. I think they'll have a lot of chemistry, and Insight being such a good AR, it's going to be a really big asset to this team. And then secondly, we have the Minnesota Rocker officially announcing their squad of Major Maniac, Priesta, Attach, and Standy as their squad sticks together for the 2022 season. They announced this by doing a little skydiving video, and it was pretty like a quirky, like fun video for them. And I pretty much had this same opinion going into the offseason that these guys were going to stick together, because you can't really make a case for dropping any of these guys. Standy, I think, should be like the franchise player for the Minnesota Rocker, or at least one of them. And then Priesta, if it seems like every single team, or at least most teams, are always gunning for him in the offseason, so it's good that Minnesota sort of locked him down again. Attach had a really, really good second half of the Cold War season, so no reason to really drop him. He had some really dominant performances. And then Major Maniac, he was the big question mark for a lot of people, because he got dropped earlier in the Cold War season, and that was just something interesting to try to deal with. And then he got brought back for the second half of the Cold War season, and then finished out Champs with them. He definitely impressed me way more this year than he did in the Modern Warfare season. I think that goes without saying. He really stepped it up, and I just think that if this team works out a few kinks, they could really be a top team. But going against some of these other teams for the Vanguard season, it's going to be really tough for them. They're going to be going against a lot of dominant teams this year. It just seems like everyone's sort of trying to, gather some super teams so that they can try to beat FaZe, because with the way FaZe is looking, it's like going to be really, really hard to beat them this year. Minnesota did win a major, though, so they have that going for them. So if you're a Minnesota fan, I would not necessarily be like mad or anything. I would be pretty optimistic going into the next year. Next up, we have the LA Thieves officially announcing their whole roster on September 10th. Pretty much while I was recording that podcast, it was like while I had 25 minutes left of the podcast, they announced pretty much the entire roster, I think it was. And they officially announced the full roster of Octane, Kenny, Draza, and Envoy. And that's pretty much how everyone else thought that it was going to go. Envoy, he had a lot of offers, but it sort of fits, Octane being the main AR, Kenny being the flex, I think he'll be, and then Draza and Envoy being the sub duo. Draza is very comparable to Priesta, and that's why I'm such a big fan of him. He's like the Swiss Army knife of COD. I think that's how Landon always puts it. That those guys are always the Swiss Army knives of COD because they can literally use anything. I remember in the middle of the Cold War season, Draza got benched by the LA Thieves, and then he goes to Challengers, plays a different role than what he's used to, and he wins the first Challengers Cup back for him. So it's just really impressive. I think that he's completely earned his spot on that team, and I think that he's got a lot of big things coming up as far as his career goes. And he's young. He's a really young player, and he can do any role that you want him to. So I think it's going to be really fun to watch this team. They have a lot more potential than last year as long as they don't make as many roster changes. And with these guys, with these players, and with the amount of players that they've let go because, people are just moving on to better things and just not wanting to have that drama, there's no reason to have any roster changes on this team. I think that this team, no matter what happens, should stick throughout the entire season. I think that they should have kept Venom, though, for the substitute position. All jokes aside, they should have really kept someone like him on the bench just because, right now I don't think they even have a sub. And secondly, he wasn't, in my opinion, he wasn't exactly a horrible player. It was just trying to get thrown into a system midway through the season and make it work was really difficult, especially when there were so many roster changes already happening when Venom came in. So it was just tough to sort of adjust. And I know that Call of Duty players need to adjust on the fly at any time, but it's just so much easier to already have a system and be used to what's happening as opposed to being thrown in and being thrown to the wolves and just expecting to perform. So the last team that was announced in the time between the last podcast and now was that the Seattle Surge announced their full roster of Accuracy, Mac, Pred, and Sib. So not 100% sure on how the roles are going to work for this team. I know that Accuracy is going to be the main AR, but it seems like that Pred will be sort of the flex player, and then Mac and Sib will be the sub duo. I think I could be wrong about that, but as we all know, Accuracy, he's the Iceman, stealing that nickname from TJ, and he got that triple kill on Optic. He had a really good year in the last World War II game. He's had some really shining moments in the last couple of years in COD, and I think he's a really good asset to the majority of teams that need a main AR. So it's really good that the Seattle Surge got this. It seems like the Seattle Surge are really transforming their philosophy on rosters. Instead of picking up a ton of veterans and really going on that and gambling on it, they're picking up basically a really young roster, and 3 of these guys more or less being rookies. Mac isn't so much of a rookie anymore because he's got 2 years under his belt, but Pred and Sib pretty much going to be rookies for this year, so it's going to be really, really interesting to see how they play. Sib has done his work in Challengers, and we pretty much know how that has gone. The only thing that I think could possibly crumble this roster if they don't perform at the beginning is personality issues, and chemistry-wise, I think that that's pretty much going to be their biggest thing, is that will they lose composure? Will they lose full at each other too easily? Hopefully Phoenix, their coach, they did announce Phoenix as their coach, and then I think his name is Novus Vita. He was the analyst for LA Thieves last season. He's the GM now for Seattle Surge, and I think those 2 pickups of Novus and Phoenix are really, really good. Thankfully, I got the chance to speak to Phoenix back when he was coaching the Western team during the Cold War season, and that was really, really cool to have happen. It was really, really fun. So I think that the Seattle Surge are in good hands this season, and there's definitely potential there. It's just a matter of can they capitalize on it. So I think that people definitely look down on some of these players, and they'll be in for a rude awakening because people forget that Mac was pretty good with a sub in Modern Warfare. He was great as a flex in the Cold War season, and we just haven't seen enough of Pred and Sib on a main stage level to really give much of an opinion as far as, I personally go. I didn't watch enough of Challengers during the Cold War season to really know a lot about Sib. I just know that he's a big personality when it comes to knowing some of the top dogs in the league. He was also a sub for the Atlanta FaZe, and he was very, very close to subbing in for Champs. So that's really interesting. So yeah, going down the line here, we basically have 6 confirmed teams for the CDL. The 2 that we pretty much know, but they haven't been announced yet, are London and Florida. Florida pretty much only replacing one guy, and that's Neptune. And then London pretty much having a really young roster as well and forming the team around Afro. And then the 4 teams that we don't really have a huge idea about, we have a pretty good idea, but it hasn't been confirmed, is Paris and Chicago don't have teams at all right now. And then we have the Optic Dallas merger happening that it's not 100% confirmed, but it's pretty much written in the stars. So that team's probably going to be Scump, Dashy, Shotzi, and Illy. It's a pretty scary team on paper, but we'll see how that goes. And then the last team there, we have the New York Subliners. So the New York Subliners are proposed and rumored to be Krim, Clay, Neptune, and Hydra. So it's a pretty nasty squad when you have Neptune and Hydra as your sub duo, no matter who the ARs and flexes are. So it's going to be really interesting. I think that the competition in general this year is going to be absolutely insane, and I'm looking forward to it personally. Vanguard is definitely impressing me way more than Modern Warfare. They just got to give us some good maps, and that's all I really care about. So if you guys enjoyed listening to this episode of Hold the Lane, episode 16, be sure to tweet me, leave an Apple review if you're watching or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Really just show your support in any way possible, because I started this last August, not this past August, but August of 2020, and then I sort of went into a bit of a hiatus with it. So I'm really trying to get back into a rhythm with it, and hopefully, that can happen. I can stay a little bit more consistent and actually do it during the regular season this year, because I love putting out this kind of content. I love documenting my thoughts on it, and I hope that you guys like listening to it. So if there's anything that you want me to improve on, like something that I didn't touch on personally, then just let me know, and I'll try to improve on that in the next episode. If there's a certain aspect of the game that you want me to hit on a little bit more, I'm more than happy to do so. So there's going to be a lot of different ways that I'm going to be trying to fill the off season with content, and hopefully you guys can be there for it. So until next week, hopefully, for the next episode of Hold the Lane, my name has been Dalton Floyd. That was Hold the Lane. Have a good time, everybody. Have a good day. Have a good rest of your day whenever you are listening to this, and continue to smile more. Shout out Roman Atwood.